Hello and welcome to the Tifo Football podcast. I am Joe Devine, and today I'm delighted to be joined by JJ Bull.
Hello!
John McKenzie.
Hi.
We wanted energy.
Steve wanted
I
energy.
brought it.
Yeah, where's your energy, John?
That was energy.
Was it?
That's as energetic as I get.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. And the author of a new book, which isn't even out yet, but has been seen in a bookstore in Blackheath. Illegally! The book is called More Than a Shirt, How Football Shirts Explain Global Politics, Money and Power. It's very fun, and we spend some of today sort of talking about it. It's Joey D'Urso!
Hello.
Woo! Oh, people don't normally get a clap, but that was a sort of, that felt like an organic, sporadic moment.
Big
there.
fan of Joey's writing.
Yeah. Joey used to work at The Athletic,
That's true.
and now he doesn't.
First time in this studio for a while.
Yeah, welcome back.
Forgot how black it is.
Blacker than the soul. Anyway, what else did we talk about today? Yes, Joey's book about shirts. Lots of shirts and the wider significance outside of football. Mainly, we played a fun game with Joey where not only has JJ and John worn a shirt today, but we also brought some in. Joey's got one, he brought a couple, and we hold up shirts and we test Joey's knowledge of the history of football and get him to explain to us how that shirt explains the world. That was quite good fun.
And I incorrectly list what some of the sponsors are
Yes.
of my shirts.
Yeah. You also
Those are
reveal
probably good.
your love for global shipping.
And welding.
Welding. If the two combine, you can weld on a ship. Or underneath, you could weld the ship.
Most ships are constructed through welding.
Well,
Yeah.
I think almost all of them are.
They say that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. Have you written any songs about welding? Maybe you should.
No, but I have written an entire album of songs about footballers. Well, they're not actually all about footballers. Most of them are. And that's out on June the 20th, which is Friday.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's it's legit.
When's your book out, Joey?
Thursday. So you could
Thursday.
Was that the
listen
19th?
to the album while reading the book.
That's
Yeah.
right. Buy the book, read the book, but listen mostly to my album.
Right. So they're both out the same day, or to compete next one?
They compete. Oh, there's
Thursday. I'm Thursday.
Oh,
JJ's
the book's
Friday.
Thursday, so people aren't going to have any money left come Friday, are
mine's
they?
free because it's on Spotify.
Oh,
and
so
Apple
they can.
Music,
yeah, so they're not going to be reading your book on Friday because they're going to be listening to.
No,
his.
you buy the book first,
Right.
But then it's not a competition because
It
it's
is.
a different
Right.
platform. Yeah, they're both excellent media.
Yeah. They're both of equal value, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Except yours is free and not of the same value as his.
And I suspect his is probably better.
Well, people should download it to find out.
Yeah.
What else it turns out that Geoducks are called gooey ducks. We talk about that. We played a separation game, which Joey completely annihilated in moments. And then in the second half, we talk about how Man City have signed a new fullback in Ait-Nouri and how that might change them as a team. We talk about the Club World Cup and Auckland City losing 10-0 to Bayern Munich. That's about it, really, isn't it? Yeah. Apart from that, it's just fun to list all of the different fun sponsors in football. You know, we've got our airlines, we've got our bookmakers.
Well, do you know what we didn't talk about?
What?
Is like betting companies on the front of them. Totally forgot. I don't really own any shirts with betting companies on them.
Do you not?
I don't. I think it's probably on purpose.
Right.
'Cause I don't like the way they look. There's loads of these made up ones, or what I think are made up companies on the front of some of these shirts.
From Asia, where you're kind of confused as if they're real or not.
Well, yeah, because then that's a whole thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so I did a few stories about this for the Athletic back in the day about these Chinese. So it's Chinese writing on a Premier League shirt, you know, Newcastle, Wolves, all sorts. But the gambling companies are banned in China, completely illegal. You can't run a gambling company in China. But what happens is people run a gambling company in the Philippines or Vietnam. People who speak Chinese, it's all in Chinese, and then they advertise on a football club in, Burnley was another one. And then if you're watching on TV in China, you see, oh, that looks like a good gambling company, go on it on your phone. And it's a way of bypassing the sort of Chinese censorship or ban on gambling. But a lot of it's very interesting business practices in some of these companies, we should say, to be careful. But it's very unusual and peculiar companies advertising through English football.
Can I mention one that might get cut out? Because like the Bournemouth shirt, they're sponsored by BJ88.
Right.
Which, what is that? It's listed in the Isle of Man. It's apparently it's the best online betting site in Asia. Philippines, Vietnam, Cambodia.
So
Bangladesh.
88 is a lucky number in Chinese. You'll see that a lot. 888.com. Eights together are lucky. The Isle of Man, that's a sort of loophole, a backdoor entry into the UK market. It's this tiny betting shop. It's a sort of scruffy looking bookmakers in Douglas, the capital of the Isle of Man. And from that office are, hundreds of millions of pounds of Asian betting companies. Are sort of
Wow.
is the way they reach the UK legally. Because the Isle of Man is not in the United Kingdom. It's a crown dependency of the United Kingdom.
Is it a bailiwick?
I don't know. Bailiwick of Jersey. I
Yeah,
believe.
Jersey
It's
is a
crown
bailiwick.
Pronounced
dependency.
Gooeywick.
Bailey goo.
And yeah, so that's how they access the UK market. But so many of these companies
Wow.
do this. And
This
yeah.
is really
You
interesting.
read about this on The Athletic.
We didn't talk about this at all during the episode.
So I just thought of it now.
No, it's good. I like it. Yeah. All right. Well, we did talk about all those other things. So, hope you enjoy it. And buy Joey's book. You You like that? Yeah?
How does Joey feel about it as well?
Oh, delighted. Yeah, I like a bit of intimidation.
Yeah, excellent.
Now, Joey, before we delve into your incredibly impressive journalistic endeavour, spanning 5 continents and rigorous research, we have some clarifications of our own to do from last week's episode.
You wrote that, didn't you? You definitely wrote that.
A reminder, this is from Steve's script. The first is a screenshot, Steve, of a couple of YouTube comments, okay, that we got on last week's episode. The first one reads, Geoducks are made better by the fact that it's pronounced gooey duck.
Yeah, I saw that.
Did you see that?
Yeah, lots of people messaged me about that. It was nice.
About 1,000 people have messaged me saying it's pronounced gooey duck.
Of the 1,000 people, how many of them do you think knew it was called or pronounced gooey duck before they heard
You
it?
think they found out themselves?
I think some of it might have been performative instruction.
You think?
What do you think?
I don't know. But it is weird, isn't it? Because if I was going to spell geoduck, I was going to call it gooey duck, I would have spelt it
Differently.
Yeah.
You could say that about quite a lot of words in
That's
the English
true,
language,
but
though,
like,
couldn't you?
there's not many words in the English language where literally the opposite vowels are used.
That's the case.
Because all you need to do is switch the O and the E around. You could argue that it was gooey duck, right?
Yeah. No, that's true. I mean, you could do that, or you could take this approach of Swank Sinatra 007, who posted saying, yes, I'm familiar with the land clam.
Yeah.
Could have just called it a land clam. Are you aware of what a gooey duck is?
Should I be?
No, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's fine. This one is addressed to you alone, JJ.
These are normally good.
This was in the. This is Steve's.
Do I get to remain in employment after it?
Nors 4331 said, "Fun fact, JJ. I went to a college called Evergreen, which has a gooey duck as their mascot. It's pronounced gooey duck. Good day, sir."
Good day to you.
Well, I mean, I think that's a fair enough response. Gooey duck. Good day, sir. Yeah.
Gooey duck to you too.
Back
I
to,
actually spelled good day with the A in the first part and the 2 O's in the second part.
back to Steve's script now. So our assumption that it was a name that was inspired by Pokemon was wrong. Did we assume that?
We did. We said that Pokemon.
I thought it was a Pokemon at first when you were talking
Wait,
about
guys, this
Geoduck.
is my favourite bit of Steve's script. He's so happy. Look at him. Okay. And yes, we've seen the Pokemon comments, which Pokemon and Postacoglu is, etc., but we just can't go there again. ... Yes. I love that bit, Steve. Because it suggests we will later. Anyway, Steve's written, Joey, you don't look like you're enjoying this, Joey. You
I'm
haven't
just
laughed
thinking
once.
about which Pokemon Ange Postecoglou.
No, don't think about that. Because it says here, Steve's written, anyway, Joey, you're a serious football person. And
Pasta Goblin.
Pasta Goblin.
Yeah.
That would be
Blastoise.
good, yeah.
Blastoise.
Joey's written this book. It's called More Than a Shirt. How Football Shirts Explain Global Politics, Money, and Power. It is a pretty cool idea. I do like this. Right, so we're going to talk about this first.
You're going to show the cover to the audience.
I mean, I think it's quite hard to. I can hold it next to my face and see.
I'm sure he will do also in the intro we've already done.
Yeah, we'll have done that in the intro. Not to worry.
You don't need to do it in the intro now.
This is a really fun. This is a very clever format. Did you come up with this format yourself, or did an editor come up with it for you?
Yeah, a mix, I think. I mean, I definitely wanted to write a book. I think the first idea was a sort of history of football sponsorship, which is a bit of that. But then the sort of device of the shirts was, conversations with editors, agent, whoever else. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm pleased with it.
It's very clever because I think it's okay, fair enough for me to say, a history of football sponsorship,
Boring,
very interesting,
yeah.
but also very boring.
Yeah.
But when you tie it in this format, where you say, let's tie it to these specific football shirt, suddenly I am hooked.
You're hooked. That's good
Yeah,
to hear. Yeah.
it's incredible. Do you want to give us the quick synopsis? You tell me why it's good.
Yeah, so I'm wearing here the shirt of Gazprom, which is I felt a bit self-conscious on the London Underground this morning wearing this because Gazprom now has a bit of a bad reputation. It's the sort of potted history is when the Soviet Union collapsed in the 90s, the communists, all the gas was state-owned, those gas fields were privatised, and then people like Roman Abramovich would own lots of oil and gas, but then the gas was ultimately controlled later on by Putin and the government and was sold to the Germans very cheaply. And this was part of the German government essentially going soft on Russia. Angela Merkel, she's now accused of going soft on Putin. And a big part of that story was Schalke. Schalke was sponsored from the year 2000 by Gazprom. There's a picture of Vladimir Putin holding up a Schalke shirt. Gazprom officials and German politicians, the German president would sort of hobnob in the Veltins arena in Gelsenkirchen. And now this is very embarrassing for them because since the invasion of Ukraine in February 22, this all looks very grubby and unsavoury, and Germany's no longer buying all this gas from Russia. And I went there a year or so ago, and people are wearing blue stickers over the Gazprom logo now.
Really?
German football fans are very sort of socially conscious, very sort of politically aware.
Yeah.
And lots of them wear now blue stickers over the Gazprom logo. So they're a bit embarrassed. They're also terrible at the moment, Schalke. They're in the Bundesliga 2.
Yeah.
And they're full on financial hard times. Of course, the high watermark of this shirt was a team with Raul and Manuel Neuer and other players. They got to the semi-finals of the Champions League in 2011.
Yeah. It's also worth saying that Gazprom was a sponsor of the Champions League.
Very much
And it was
so.
a great era of the Champions League. Not only do I love the Gazprom logo, but I also feel a warm sense
Gazprom
of
UEFA
familiarity.
Champions League.
When I think about Gazprom, I think, that was a good era of the Champions League, wasn't it? I don't think about all the bad stuff.
But
it does work.
They now sponsor Red Star Belgrade in Serbia. So Serbia is probably the closest country to Russia in Europe. One of the few countries that hasn't sort of, cut off ties diplomatically. And now you see Red Star Belgrade in the Champions League playing in a Gazprom shirt still.
Yeah. I've heard on balance, on the whole, that Serbia's football fans are less sort of progressively conscientious.
I think that's probably fair to say. Yeah.
I didn't
They
know.
chant Russia, Rossiya. They chant that at matches.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, so that's one example. But the shtick is 11 different big stories like that: Russia, China, America, oil and gas, migration that can be told through a couple of different football shirts. And I've been to 5 continents around the world to tell the story, and it's been fun.
I mean, I wasn't going to say anything profound. I was just going to say it's interesting that the most embarrassing thing about that shirt is that it's a Schalke shirt rather than it's got Gazprom written on it. So that
actually,
would be more embarrassing on the tube for you, I think.
So when I went to see them, they broke the world record of the highest attendance in the non-top tier of any club in the world ever. They're huge. It's 55,000 seater, full every week, and they're terrible.
Would that have been, maybe it would have been Newcastle before?
Hamburg.
Was it Hamburg?
Schalke, and then Newcastle. Yeah, Newcastle, 50,000. Pretty impressive.
The Zweite Bundesliga has got a lot. It's got a lot of. I bet the average attendance at the Zweite Bundesliga is higher than.
And I think because the Bundesliga is so often a walkover, it's exciting and unpredictable and has huge crowds.
Yeah.
Cologne are massive as well. I think they're in there at the moment. Yeah.
They just got out, I think. Yeah.
Well, anyway, as you said, the book is chaptered by these different football shirts. So we thought it would be fun to put you to the test, on the spot. Not only are JJ and John both wearing football shirts, but we've collected a few others from the office,
wow.
And we want to show them to you, and then for you to tell us how they explain the world in their own specific way. So let's start with
Give it a
JJ.
go.
JJ, tell us what shirt are you wearing for the listener that can't see, and show it to the viewer that can.
I'm wearing this season's... Is it still this season? Yes.
Yeah.
This season's Napoli shirt when they won Serie A with Scott McTominay on the back. That's what I'm wearing.
And who's it sponsored by?
MSC.
Who is MSC?
Well, I mean, I
Is this
know...
sort of shipping company.
As a starting point, though, do you ever think when you buy a football shirt, because you buy a lot of football shirts?
Yeah, I
I've
do.
seen photos of yours and John McKenzie's wardrobe. You have separate wardrobes, but the photos of these separate wardrobes, they're just insanely full. Do you ever think about what the sponsor is on the shirt before you wear it?
Yes.
But
And-
what in the case of MSC, you just don't know what it is.
Well, I'm a big fan, as well, of global shipping companies.
Yeah.
And I would say MSC is one of my favourite world leaders in global container shipping.
Yeah.
And so
I love how Bezos has revolutionized global shipping and in the
I
logistics
think about
of it.
global container shipping on a daily basis. And I just wanted something to. In the same way, if I see any football shirt that has like Nintendo on it or something, you know, I want that shirt. But if I see something that talks about one of the world leaders in global shipping containment,
How much are they paying you to?
Do you remember the heady days of the Suez Canal crisis? Not that Suez Canal
Which
crisis.
one? The
When it
recent
got
one?
the one with the boat in it. Which,
The way it went
what was
sideways.
it called? It had a funny old name.
Yeah, it got jammed in sideways.
Yeah, and it
That was
actually
great.
brought the whole of global shipping container industry to a.
It was
a
one of those
halt.
moments where you realised how fragile the ecosystem of globalisation is.
Yeah, one little stretch of water and you close that off, and
I think this is quite a wholesome shirt. I mean, Italy has had some really, frankly, dodgy sponsors in the past. Some companies which don't really exist.
I am
and whatever
frantically
else.
searching to find anything that might make it like
yeah.
or something. But yeah,
Been to the port of Naples. It's a big, and container ships are real tangible things which keep the world going and employ people. So I think that's pretty good as sponsors
This
go.
guy's been to the port of Naples.
I have. Yeah,
I've been there too.
I was actually
Yeah.
I was talking about this podcast. I've been away for the weekend with my mates. We
Yeah.
went for a long walk, and we were talking about the topic of shirt sponsorship. And we were saying there's definitely been a move away from like because originally there would have been local sponsors, right? And there would
Big
be
time, yeah.
a tie to the area on the shirt, and that's very much gone away now, right?
Yeah, in the 80s you had, like a local beer company would often, just a really sort of small local company would sponsor really big clubs. I mean, it sort of goes in waves. An interesting one in England, they're all Japanese electronics companies. You have Hitachi in Liverpool, you have JVC and Arsenal, you have Sharp and Manchester United, Panasonic, Nottingham Forest, there's so many of them. And that was basically, although it's a international company, it was selling to British consumers who were suddenly, people getting a bit richer, a bit more disposable income, were buying stereos and TVs and whatever else. And now we have smartphones and laptops, but people would have, a hi-fi and big speakers and a TV, and it'd be a big proportion of people's income would be like electronic stuff. So that was the sort of story of the 80s and 90s. And then the Japanese economy kind of fell into hard times and they all disappeared off the shirts. And then with the biggest English clubs now, you see they're much more global. I mean, Standard Chartered, who sponsor Liverpool, they're based in London, but they don't have any customers in England. They're, Egypt, where, of course, Mo Salah is from, or Colombia, Luis Diaz, and, some of these Liverpool stars are in the countries where Standard Chartered is massive, but the UK is kind of a tiny part of what these guys are thinking about now.
It was like that. I remember reading about that with Chevrolet when they sponsored Manchester United.
All about America.
It was never anything to do with the UK.
Yeah,
they didn't
it's
even. I don't
US.
think they didn't even sell Chevrolet cars in Europe at the time.
No, yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I think also that Manchester United had some big American sponsors at the time. The Glazers came in. It was Aon, it was IEG, AIG, these big finance firms. But all football clubs are obsessed with America because people are rich, right? Like, there's other countries where there are more people, but Americans the highest GDP in the world, and there's lots of money there.
And you can grow there, right?
Yeah.
Because in theory, I think technically Norway have like a higher GDP per capita, but they're all
There's a
already
few
like
million of them.
football, so there's no, and there's not many of them, and they're all already converted, right? Whereas America feels like this great dream, doesn't it? That like one day a football team will be like the Beatles, and will crush America.
Messi's kind of doing that a bit,
Right.
And I went to Texas for the book, and went to Houston and Dallas. And I think another thing about Americans culturally, it's quite normal to support 4 club teams of like baseball, American football, basketball. Which in Europe we don't really have that culture. Club sport outside of football is pretty small scale, whereas in the US it's completely normal. Like you could add an extra team onto that, and you support 5 or 6 teams.
Yeah. Plus, I was thinking, you said Messi's kind of breaking the USA. I think to a certain extent, right? And then you read stories about like how many tickets they're selling for the Club World Cup.
Yeah.
But having said that, it is also the NHL and the NBA finals right now when they're also trying to put a soccer tournament on that like the rest of the world is unconvinced by as well. It feels like not the easiest sell to get people along.
No, and the stadiums are looking fairly full. I mean, who knows? Like, I think they've tried pretty hard to get bums on seats, but I think there's a huge untapped potential in America. I mean, spoke to people. You see football shirts everywhere, and I've been to America quite a bit, and I've more recently you really notice shirts everywhere, which I think you wouldn't have done 10 years ago.
Have you ever been to any ports in America though? That's the main thing.
I've been to New York. That's definitely a port.
I guess it's sort of like the whole of New York is kind of a port, isn't it?
Port authority is the thing in New York, isn't it? I don't quite know what that means, but
I don't know either. But
that's
it
from
sounds
season 2 of The Wire.
Yeah,
the Port Authority.
The Port Authority.
Yeah,
that's when you first got into shipping, wasn't it?
One of the many ways.
Yeah.
I've always admired the sea and the ocean and the boats, and I always think, what could I contain on there? And then that's what I do. And everything I like about this Napoli shirt is it's Emporio Armani made it, right?
That's a classy touch.
So it's like all like Italian.
Right.
So it's just different to what you'd normally get.
It's not like an Adidas or Nike or something.
Yeah, it's something very, like, you can specifically date this shirt, and also they won Serie A this season.
That's
and
nice.
McTominay and Billy Gilmore were there.
All right, let's move on to another test. This one here is a slightly different proposition that John's wearing, because there is no sponsor.
It's quite hard to...
John, tell the audience what it is, and then Joey guesses.
Yeah, it's just the Gibraltar national team shirt, which we bought when we went on holiday to south of Spain.
Manufactured by Adidas.
Yes.
We should say.
Yeah, very weird place, Gibraltar.
Yeah. I mean, the only anecdote I've got about Gibraltarian football is, of course, Danny Higginbottom. Played with. I suppose one interesting thing about national shirts in general is that they don't have sponsors, which isn't some sort of lofty idealism. It's basically because UEFA and FIFA don't want anyone competing with their sponsors. So when you watch Gibraltar against England, you've got...
Is that right?
Yeah.
It's I think they call it... I think that's going to have to get cut out, Steve. That bit was cut out where I described it as... No, I didn't describe it as anything. What were we saying, Joey?
So the reason national teams don't have sponsors is because UEFA, who run European football, and FIFA don't want anyone competing with their own sponsors. FIFA have lots of big money sponsors, and they don't want the local Gibraltar.
Do you think that would ever happen in domestic football? Do you think there's a world in which the Premier League says, right, we're going to get rid of shirt sponsors? Because that would impact teams' revenue quite
but then the Premier League decides what to do based on what the clubs want. Yeah. So I think that's very unlikely.
It's a members' club, the Premier League.
Yeah.
Whereas UEFA is more of a sort of
top down.
John, why did you? Joey asked you to wear your most controversial shirt. Why do you think this is your most controversial shirt?
Well, I mean, there are questions about the provenance of Gibraltar on that.
Let's explore them now. Yeah, what are the questions around the provenance of Gibraltar?
Well, Gibraltar is like a British outcrop on the Spanish mainland.
Yeah, you'd love to call it British, wouldn't you? You love calling it British.
Yeah, I don't know. We went on holiday there, and it is very. It's an odd place because it's like you're in very much Spanish Spain, right? You're on the south coast of Spain.
Red phone boxes and all that.
Yeah, and you go there, and it's like very much like we are British, and you cross over from the Spanish mainland where it just feels like you're on holiday on the Riviera, and then you go to this place where it's like. Yeah.
Just want to make it clear, we didn't go on holiday to Gibraltar.
We didn't.
We flew to Gibraltar to go on holiday in the south of Spain.
The Red Imps? Is that Red Imps?
Yeah. I think so.
2 bits of Gibraltar trivia.
My granddad was posted in Gibraltar for his national service, so it's like it was quite nice to go and visit it to see, because it's sort of family history, I suppose. But it was a very odd place.
He was battling for it to be long back to.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. I hasten to add that I have no opinion on the whether or not Gibraltar is Spanish or British.
You don't have any opinion on it? Well, you've upset everyone there.
Yeah.
Well done to you. Let's do another shirt. JJ, what else have you got? What have you brought?
Well, I wanted to bring one with one of the airlines on it, because I think that's probably a big part of your book that I haven't read yet.
Yeah.
But I will.
Is this Benfica?
This is Benfica. So I went to see them play in Lisbon, and I bought a shirt. I bet you can't guess who's on the back. I won't even play this game. I got...
Sagres.
Well, there's a sponsor on the back with Sagres, so I like it for that, right? But I got Hugo Felix. It's not even João, because Hugo Felix is my favourite player in Football Manager this year.
79, isn't it?
Yeah, that's his number he plays under. He's really good, that boy.
That's nice.
But yeah, so Benfica, even they are sponsored by Emirates.
Yeah, so Emirates, of course, is everywhere in football. I mean, the example I use is Real Madrid, because for a while it was Emirates Airlines against El Clasico was Emirates against Qatar Airways with Barcelona. Emirates is the airline of Dubai, and they sponsor Real Madrid, AC Milan, Arsenal, Benfica, a club in Tunisia. What's interesting about Arsenal is it's, of course, the name of the stadium. And I lived not far from there for a while, and it's striking how the Emirates is just, even if you have no interest in football, the Emirates is just part of your kind of local environment, which is an amazingly powerful bit of...
It's permeated local culture for sure, right?
Yeah. But the other interesting thing about Emirates is they don't really get any flack for it. Like Dubai is a pretty oppressive place in a similar way to Qatar and whatever else, but they've spent a few $100 million sponsoring these big clubs, and no one really kind of notices. It just seeps into the unconscious, whereas Qatar and Saudi Arabia have had huge criticism of human rights abuses and everything else. So I think Dubai have done better.
I think it's because it's like trad oppression, It happened like before Qatar, before Saudi, with the World Cup, I think, did a lot. Because I remember like I don't know, in the mid-2000s, like all of the stories about the Gulf that now we would be talking about Qatar, about Saudi Arabia, all of them were about Dubai because there were a lot of people from the West moving there. There was a lot of new business there. And I remember the nickname, wasn't it called like the city built by slaves or something? Like there was a lot of talk about this. And then Qatar and Saudi Arabia kind of came in, swept the limelight, the negative limelight away, and Dubai has just sort of become a normal part of.
Yeah, and it's a place where people go to on holiday. People go to party, to shop, to whatever else. It's a sort of culturally quite liberal for the Middle East, but politically, if you tweet bad things about the government, you can get put in jail.
Do you think that's it though? It's like successfully navigated those initial choppy waters, and now because it's associated as a place that you might go on holiday, or that someone, they work there and they like it and it's sunny, that it feels like much more harmless because it's a holiday destination.
Yeah, although I spent a week in Qatar, which I write about in the book, and Qatar are really annoyed about. Qatar feel that they get unfair criticism. Because actually Qatar's labour laws changed a lot over the last, and they were horrendous to start with, and people died building the stadiums, and that, should never be forgotten or forgiven. But they did actually, the laws are more progressive than many other countries in the Middle East in terms of labour laws, certainly more than Saudi Arabia, and certainly more than Dubai actually now. So they get really annoyed. They were like, oh, we're hosting this World Cup, and I think Liverpool were doing like a warm weather camp in Dubai, and no one was saying, the people who are running that place probably weren't living in great conditions, and they get really, I find it hard to feel too sorry for the Qataris. They invited the world, and you're going to get some flack and some scrutiny when you do so. But yeah, I think Dubai, has basically played a blinder at evading scrutiny while spreading its brand around the world. And I think the trick to that is shirt sponsorship rather than hosting big events where journalists will be sitting in hotels in your country for a week on end.
That's interesting. All right, give me another shirt, JJ.
Another
what
shirt.
Else we got?
Well, this one's a little bit odd. So it's an Aberdeen away shirt, but I wondered if this might be relevant because it's also sponsored by something adjacent to oil and gas, Salt Energy. Because as you know, Joe, in addition to being a big fan of shipping containment,
you love oil.
There's 5 other key areas that I also really like.
Oh,
they are
through them.
Well, I like drilling and equipment rental.
Yeah.
Torquing.
Talking.
I rarely stop talking about torquing.
Spelling that T with a Q. Nice.
Yeah. Pressure testing, big fan.
You're definitely a big fan of that.
Repair and refurbishment, and the one I would say probably the most common is welding.
Yeah.
Oh, you're banging on about that off camera just now.
And I like to weld. And
what was the last thing you welded?
A robot together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 robots together, or
I'm
just
ahead
one?
of the game in humanoids, and it's gonna be doing my work for me here while I do something else.
Have you ever considered underwater welding? Because I've heard that's a very dangerous job.
That's a crazy job. The guys who do that are absolutely insane, because I'm from Aberdeen, obviously.
Aberdeen,
so many folks work offshore and do these jobs. Some of them are absolutely nuts. It's serious what these guys do.
Yeah, no good.
Yeah, no good. No,
I've watched The Abyss twice, and I'm not interested in underwater welding at all.
No. There's some of the stories you hear from some of these lads who go offshore and do all that work is crazy. But that's Geoducks Energy in the front of Aberdeen, who are part of that oil and gas thing.
Yeah, I was in Aberdeen 6 weeks ago, and you see the oil and gas everywhere. Like wind turbines and big factories, and but it's a big thing throughout football sponsorship has been kind of local industries, right? And the people at Geoducks Energy probably get a box at Pittodrie and wine and dine there and whatever else, and that's the sort of links with their community and company, which is less the case with the massive clubs now that have huge multinational sponsors. But
that's kind of why I took another Aberdeen shirt, because the jump. So Aberdeen's sponsors change quite often. It's just the team I know the best. But then, so this current season,
funny looking Adidas logo. It's not a knockoff.
It's big
is it?
now. They gigantised the.
Wow.
So that must be a relatively recent shirt.
So this was last season's the one that's just finished away shirt. Previously sponsored by oil and gas things, it changes quite a lot. But the Texo is a dynamic technology-led, UK-based international industrial services provider. Just sort of an odd thing. But a lot of Scottish teams now owned by Americans, and I wonder we'll see influence from that sort of... And you've probably got a better point that we can jump onto from there.
Sponsors linked to companies is... the most obvious example is Etihad Airlines, which sponsors Manchester City, which is owned by the royal family of Abu Dhabi. Another airline, you have Sella, a Saudi Arabian events company, is a sponsor of Newcastle United. And it's kind of a way to put money into the club slightly indirectly. Yeah, and so the league has rules about whether the amount given in sponsorship to a club is fair, and they look at that, and I think they've deemed that those ones are okay, but that's a big calculation that goes on in Premier League HQ.
Oh, great. Well, you've also brought in some of your own shirts as well, Joey. What did you bring us?
This is a club you may have heard of, FC Barcelona. This, of course, was worn by potentially the greatest club team of all time. They won the Champions League several times with Messi, Xavi, Iniesta. Barcelona for a long time had no shirt sponsor. The Champions League final where they beat Arsenal in 2006 was their last ever game without a sponsor. They called themselves Més que un club, more than a club, with the sort of grand ideals of no sponsorship and all sorts of other warm and fluffy things. This was their first sponsor, which is UNICEF, which is, of course, the children's charity of the United Nations, a very good cause. Barcelona actually paid UNICEF that as a charitable donation. It didn't last very long because soon after that we have this.
Yay!
Qatar Airways, which is basically a billboard for the state of Qatar. This came in actually the same week that Qatar was awarded the World Cup in December 2010.
Yeah.
So I think the kind of evolution of Barcelona shirts over the years tell you quite a lot, from these sort of warm and fluffy ideals to a billboard for Qatar.
What was the prompt that shifted them from that strategy to the other?
Money. The as you know, football became more expensive as TV rights were rising. Barcelona has this sort of democratic saucisse system. And for years, ticket revenue was what drove most of that revenue, and they had a massive stadium. But the more time goes on, the more TV money and commercial money is important, particularly when you're competing with state-owned clubs. So they needed cash, and Qatar offered a lot of it.
I guess at the elite level, like, transfer fees just went up and up and up, and nothing else really matched that in terms of revenue, right? So you have to try and get as many revenue streams as you can to...
and having a massive stadium now just doesn't matter as much as it used to. And, Bournemouth have more money than AC Milan because of TV.
Yeah. Well, can we talk a little bit about Kettering Town?
Yes, we can.
Because
the Poppies.
Again, I was on holiday this weekend, and one of my friends is a Kettering Town fan, and he was very quick to point out when I mentioned this that Kettering Town were the first team to have a sponsor on their shirt.
Yeah.
It's in the book, John.
It's in the book, yeah.
Kettering Town were the first team to have a shirt sponsor in England. It was Kettering Tyres was a local firm, and then they got in trouble from the FA because it was banned having shirts. And what they did is they just scrubbed out the end of the word, so it was Kettering T, which they claimed was a Kettering Town.
So smart.
But I think they got in trouble. But at that time, German clubs already had sponsors, and I think eventually they were just like, we're leaving money on the table here. We want our teams to compete in Europe, so they just sort of gave up.
Yeah, I know. I actually know the history because I was told it this weekend. But yeah,
Jägermeister.
It was Braunschweig originally. Yeah, this was 76 was I think Kettering Tyres, and then 78 I think Coventry get the first official sponsors.
And another big thing was Leeds United under Don Revie in I think 73. Before that, replica kits weren't a thing, and someone from Admiral approached Don Revie and said, "Look, we'd like to make these replica shirts. We'd like to sell them in shops." And he said, "Not the
Admiral,
white."
Just to be clear, Admiral, because I don't think they're not a very popular brand now at all.
No, they're a
but
British sports
British
based
manufacturer, like an Adidas, like a Nike.
Yeah.
They're making the shirts rather than sponsoring them.
Exactly. And they said that the white shirts, of course, copied from Real Madrid, are sacrosanct. You're not touching the white shirts, but you're a Leeds fan, aren't you? Is it a yellow away shirt? The yellow away shirt had a big Admiral on it, and the sort of training kits. Have you seen the film The Damned United? And they were all wearing these very fetching...
Yeah.
But that was completely new. No one had ever done that before. And they sold them in sports shops. And if you're a little kid, I don't know, maybe living in London or Manchester, the only shirt you could buy would be a Leeds shirt. And then everyone at the other club sort of thought, hang on, we're not having this. So very quickly they all copied the idea.
Do you think that's one of the... I mean, obviously Leeds were a big team and they were winning championship and stuff, but do you think that it's perhaps one of the reasons that they were such a popular team, had fans everywhere, that for at least a year or two maybe the only replica kit you could buy was a Leeds kit?
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, very possibly. I think replica kits just weren't nearly as big a thing as they were, and they're often pretty kind of shoddy quality. And there aren't many kicking around from the sort of 70s and 80s, hence those are worth a lot of money. But yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
How quickly did sponsorship sort of catch on after the late 70s? Was it just ubiquitous?
Well, not really, because football's huge cash injection, certainly in England, was like the mid-90s. And actually, for much of the 80s, it was all a bit sort of tin pot, not much money. Teams would often just not have a sponsor. It'd be like the local brewery. Aston Villa won the European Cup in 82 with no sponsor. Then they had Devonports, which is literally like the brewery down the road, probably approach the kind of European Cup winning chairman and be like, "Oh, can we give you a few quid?" And they'll be like, "Yeah, all right." And then there was no sponsor. And then, the mid-90s, you had the big TV deal was 97 with the Premier League, which is a huge turning point. Euro 96 in England. That was when the big money came into football. And there were sponsors before that, but that was when it all really, really took off.
Well, there we go. That was a conversation adjacent to more than a shirt. How Football Shirts Explain Global Politics, Money and Power by Joey Durser. It's a thrilling read. It's very, very fun. You should consider grabbing it. And we're going to hold Joey Durso around for the rest of the show. In a moment, we're going to play the separation game. We're going to talk about some transfers in the second half. And also, we're going to find out from Joey what other ports he's visited internationally. But for now, let's play or start the separation game, and then we'll go to a quick break while you guys have a think. Joey, you're welcome to play, by the way. Okay. You might want to get your phone out for this so that you can use it to assist you. Now, this week, the separation game has been prepared by Steve Hankey. Steve writes, The Athletic's Kiefer O'Neill has done published a lovely piece on 12 players who, quote, need a transfer this window. One of them is former Fiorentina, Juventus and current Liverpool player Federico Chiesa. Yeah? Now, some of you might remember, of course, that Federico is the son of fellow famed Italian forward Enrico Chiesa. So, today's separation game is, can we find club connections between Enrico and Federico?
That's fun.
That is quite fun. So, Joey, the way this works is what we need. You can start at either end of the chain, but you need to connect them through players they've played with at teams, and the connections need to be at least both players must have played one first team match in the same season. The number you come with at the end will be counting the overall number of players that you've used, including both father and son here. And for now, let's go to a break. And when we go on. What were you going to ask a question?
No.
Are you sure? Do you want to ask it again?
Go at the game.
Are you sure? Yeah, you want to
do it one?
Yeah, you've got
Buffon.
Buffon. Oh my God, Steve, have you? Right, let's go to a break anyway. We'll go to a break anyway. It's an emergency break. We'll be back in a minute. You heard it correct, listener. Just before we went to an ad break there. Joey Durso. I mean, this is why you should buy his book, because no one has been smart enough yet to instantly solve a football separation game in one go. Not only did Joey Durso... Parma's in the book?
Because Parmalat, the famous sponsor, collapsed in a massive fraud. Europe's biggest ever bankruptcy. So when you see those 90s nostalgia, remember.
Yeah. Love a bit of fraud, man. Love a bit of white-collar crime, you know.
Yeah, and that's all, that's all very legally safe. They've been convicted. People have gone to prison for a very long time for their roles in Parmalat. So, yeah.
Oh, I just bought a Parma shirt with Parmalat on it. Didn't know that. That's cool.
Well, anyway, not only has Joey Durso solved the separation game in one, or technically three, because of how the stupid people have insisted that we count the scores here. In a sense, it's because we include the people either side.
No, it's the connections, so it's one.
Damn it, my point has been ruined. Never mind. Anyway, he also managed to do it in a way that Steve Hankey's own answer wasn't even accurate, we discovered. Like, you made the game and then... Your answer
My answer is still accurate. It's not as good as Joey's, and it took me half an hour, so it's still not a win for me.
This whole bit is just ruined, isn't it? Both things I said are untrue.
Joey is right, though. Buffon.
Well, congratulations, Joey. I mean, I'm not even going to bother asking, unless you've got something you want to say.
Well, the way you can do it, because Joey thought you'd do it through Italy, but we had to, during the break, had to say, well, it's only clubs.
It's only clubs.
But you can go straight away. Federico Chiesa played with Gigi Buffon in the year 2020 at Juventus, and he was at Juventus for... Well, he did 2 spells, but in his first spell, it doesn't matter. He played at Parma before that.
Yeah.
And then that's where he played with Enrico Chiesa.
Sure, so that's the one.
Yeah.
Well done, Joey.
Yeah,
okay.
I've ended up going down a very weird route.
Have you?
Yeah, because Enrico Chiesa plays with Guillermo Amor somewhere, I think.
Guillermo Amor.
Who is obviously a famous Barcelona player.
Sure.
But he spent a year at Livingston in Scotland.
Oh, I like this now.
Where he played with Robert Snodgrass, I'm pretty sure.
Oh.
So you could maybe end up going from Robert Snodgrass through to Liverpool somehow and getting Chiesa that way, but I don't have time.
I love Snodgrass. He was
That's
great
good.
fun. Yeah. Okay, well, congratulations to everyone. Mostly Joey and not at all to Steve. Okay, now let's talk about a few little transfers before we wrap up. First off, we missed this last week because we had an exceptionally busy running order. Manchester City have agreed a deal to sign Algerian international Rayan Ait-Nouri from Wolverhampton Wanderers for £33 million. 23-year-old made 157 appearances for Wolves across 5 seasons, primarily as a left-back or as a left wing-back. Who wants to talk about Ait-Nouri and what this means for Manchester City?
Well, happily either of us. I love Ait-Nouri. I think he's been great. I think he's been one of Wolves' standout players for a long time. I thought he'd be due to arrive at a Champions League club for about 2 or 3 seasons now. And I think what the interesting thing that you'll see with him at Manchester City is what Guardiola does with his tactical setup at the moment, because it looks like he's looking for outside fullbacks rather than the ones that tuck in. And so we'll probably see lots of play. We saw this a little bit at the end of last season, where you had Nico O'Reilly was playing like a left back and pushing up. So you can get loads of bodies in the middle of the pitch, and you can play players, on the wings who are your fullbacks to give you all your width. So you can play those people in the middle. So you can block all that out. You've got loads of options. You've got loads of players close together, lots of short passes, so you can control the game you want to. But then the risks of having players push forward on the wings is that you might leave those spaces vacant. So he doesn't have an outside right either. His options are be a Kanji or Rico Lewis, who's not really a fullback, I would say.
Matheus Nunes, they played a bit.
Matheus Nunes, sorry, I'm forgetting him. So, but yeah, he's done really well there as well. So this is probably what we'll see. And Guardiola tends to be ahead of everyone else, and then people start to follow what he does. So you'll see a knock-on effect of this. Interesting that Arsenal haven't really gone for outside fullbacks, and so I wonder whether as Arteta separates himself from this, I don't know what the word is, but this feeling that he's a Guardiola disciple or light. He's very much not, and he's stuck with what he's doing now with the big lads at the back and Lewis Skelly as your inside midfielder. But so that's the thing we find with Ait-Nouri. He's got the best probably option you could buy at left back for that position. Who can he is excellent at all parts of the game. So as a wing back, he can play inside, outside, really good in short spaces, really good at dribbling, really good at producing in the final third as well, and a good defender. So it should make them a lot better in that position.
I think it's quite interesting from a tactical point of view, because I think in previous years we've been so used to having front threes where the wide players are width holders, right? And so what often happens is the opposition fullbacks will orient themselves on the wide forwards. And the idea then is that you create a lot of space in the opposition back line, which you then attack with interiors or eights hitting the channels, or maybe an underlapping fullback. And now what we saw last season from Manchester City was the front three being much narrower, which means you squeeze the opposition back line super tight, and then you end up with this really nice situation where with fullbacks they're usually then being tracked by the opposition wide forwards. Which means that if you can arrive dynamically, so moving basically, you can often get ahead of your marking attacker who's tracking your fullback, and so your fullback end up with space in front of them with the ball dynamically. And I think the big question, the big debate about Pep Guardiola has always been, he uses his wingers in these sort of very static ways. They often pass backwards and sideways. They don't often take their fullbacks on, which I think is not true. But I think part of the reason why that ends up being very unattractive to the neutral viewers is because they play statically. They get squared up against their fullback. They maybe get around their fullback. I mean, Jeremy Doku dribbles people more than anyone else, so that does happen. But then you come up against these now really settled blocks that you're coming up against. Whereas last season we started seeing from City the ability to create space in wide areas and then find those fullbacks running at speed and then getting in behind defences that way. So I think a lot of it just comes from that just basically changing up the sort of marking responsibilities for players, changing up where space is made and exploited. And I think, it'll be really interesting to see what City do, because I think they will move between both of those systems. They'll move between the old system and the new system, depending on what opponents are doing. I
was going to say as well, Pep Linder's been there now, is super interesting in what they do with a lot of this player, because if you have those players tight together, it in a way could look a bit like the old Liverpool, where you had outside fullbacks and then the more narrow forwards. But I think there's a lot of stuff that I think Guardiola will move things on. It won't just be on the team shape and things like that. I think what we saw I've looked at a lot of PSG recently, and a lot of the things they do that are really interesting are players just drop into those positions, that positional play thing. So as long as there's one person in the position, it's fine. But they make a lot of these really clever, I keep seeing them referred to as blindside runs, but it's just running into the space, taking over the position that someone else has vacated. Especially Kvaratskhelia and Fabian Ruiz, they do it all the time. And so if one drops in, one goes forward. So if one of City's like left forward, whoever that is, doesn't have to be a winger, could be a what looks like a central player, drops in deep. Someone else makes a run from midfield to go and beyond. And they've got players like Reinders and all that now as well that can do that. Or the left back can make the run forward to move them forward. And I think it might make them a little bit more fun this season. I feel like they're going to be less like Grealished. I think it'll be a little bit more fun and dynamic going forward, because otherwise what's the point?
A lot of it comes from the fact that we've shifted from 15 years ago, where everyone was using basically zonal structured defences, often mid blocks, and Pep Guardiola's approach was designed to just exploit the space in those structures. Whereas what we've seen in the 15 years since is that everyone now is like, well, if we play with those kind of structures, we're just going to get picked off by these positional teams. So we then saw the rise of these more hybrid pressing systems, where actually the idea was to try and go man to man as much as possible, and that just completely changes the concept of space that's being used as well. If you're being marked by someone, it's very different to then like moving between these zones where someone's just basically covering an area. And so I think a lot of the fluidity that we're seeing, I think PSG, a great example of that, is because if you want to create space for yourself now, you have to move, because that's the only way you're going to lose your marker. So I think all of this is like really interesting from the evolution of football tactics point of view.
Oh, I wasn't sure if you were gonna, because it was bang, bang, bang. You see them go. You just say Ait-Nouri, and then they ain't shutting up.
I like talking about this stuff. This is fun though. And then the thing is with that, right? So you get some managers will go super into it, and they'll work out really clever ways to switch between like man and zonal and how to cater for all the different dangers that they face, whereas some will just like launch the ball, and because people will be dragged out with different defending structures, you can just launch it, and then as long as you're around to win the second ball, you get like success that way, and it'll go back to what it was, and you're getting like 2 striker systems as well. So it's going fully back to
even Pep and Arteta are doing that, right? Like how many times the Chelsea game that City beat Chelsea the second half of the season, what they were doing is just isolating Erling Haaland against Trevor Chalobah, dragging everyone else away because it's man oriented, and then you've got Edison, who could just bomb the ball onto Haaland's head, and then you end up with these the ability to come out on top in these 1v1 matchups. So
that might be then like a reversal to go in like a really aggressive zonal Arrigo Sacchi type thing, right? So then you get really aggressive, loads of goals and stuff happen, but it'd be fun. Yeah,
I can't wait for Catenaccio to come back.
Well, that's a natural response to that. That's what will happen.
Sure. Yeah. Talk about that bolt on TikTok. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, we've been spending a little bit of time talking about elite football there. Let's also spare some time to think about funny non-elite football. Just funny. Depends on your perspective. Steve Hankey doesn't know where I'm going. I'm off plan.
I don't know where you're going with this at all. Normally I've got an idea.
Let's see if I can get you to guess with more things I say, because there is a football tournament going on at the moment.
That's where I thought you might have been going.
I
thought you'd be more careful with how you talk about it.
I'm not careful about how I talk about this. It's called the Club World Cup. Don't know if you've heard about it. It's like a pretend new tournament that they're trying to make out there. Anyway, something happened in the Club World Cup over the weekend, which was Auckland City, who are from New Zealand. They're not like the Auckland City FC that you might have heard of, who win like the New Zealand top tier.
It's because they play in the A League, right, in Australia.
They play in the A League. This is Auckland City, who play in the NZ League. I don't even know what it's called. The one in New Zealand. They are, just to put this into perspective for you. Here's a great fact from Jordan Campbell's piece about this from yesterday. The cost of travelling to the US for Auckland City was over double the club's annual turnover. That's how small this team is, okay? But they will receive at least $3.5 million for participating in the tournament. So for all the naysayers of the Club World Cup, of which there are many, and I would count myself amongst them at times, and so for all the naysayers of the Club World Cup, of which there are some, and at times I would count myself amongst them, it has resulted, at the very least, this team going home with $3.5 million of money. That's very cool. Love that money.
That means they can then also dominate their domestic leagues and break those as well.
No. And I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn here, because I can't remember if this is the case for this team or if this just happened with other leagues. There were at least at one point conversations about other players from around the league joining the team, and also the money being taken by the association, not the team.
That's good.
To avoid that specific thing. I can't remember exactly what happened, but Seb wrote a great piece about it, Seb Stafford Law, which you can read, that explains how they're going to divvy up that money.
I do find it quite funny that basically this...
But we should say, I haven't even finished introduction. They lost 10-0 to Bayern Munich. Yeah. That's what happened in their opening game of the Club World Cup. They lost 10-0 to Bayern Munich. It was fairly embarrassing. So
I was going to say, it's quite funny. They've just sent one team over as a sort of sacrificial lamb to do the solid for the rest of the league, right? To be like, you lose 10-0 a few times, bring the money back and we'll share it out amongst us.
Well, there's a great Jordan Campbell's piece about this. It's so great. It reads, if you forgive me, I'm just going to read it for 1 second. Spare a thought for Auckland City goalkeeper Connor Tracy. The 28-year-old made 7 saves against Bayern Munich and still conceded double figures, having taken unpaid leave from his day job for the pleasure. After passing the ball straight to Jamal Musiala for the 9th goal, there may have been part of him wishing that he was back at the warehouse distributing pharmaceuticals to vets across New Zealand.
You should get into shipping containment.
He'd have a lot more money if he worked in shipping.
What the audience got to see there was you shifting into voiceover, Joe.
Did you like it?
Yeah, that was seamless.
I could do that for the whole episode if you want. Anyway, the reason I brought this up is because Jordan has identified that there is a philosophical tension at the heart of FIFA President Gianni Infantino's shiny new toy, a.k.a. the Club World Cup. What do you think, Joey D'Urso, about the nature of a tournament like this where one team beats another 10-0 in the first game?
I kind of half watched. I was actually in a pub yesterday with a friend, not intending to watch this game, but there's a bloke on the table next to us on his own who was an Auckland City fan. He was from Auckland. Wow. He'd gone to the pub on his own to watch it, and a real bonding experience with this poor man, seeing his team be humiliated. But it was, you guys would be able to explain this better than me, but the sort of tactical... You don't see mismatches like that, right? And it was like the Auckland players were just sort of not moving, it looked like. The Bayern players were just pinging it around the box, and they were just static. They were like mannequins. I mean, do we ever see mismatches like that in English football? I mean,
FA Cup maybe,
but I feel like it's a lot. If a top Premier League team plays a National League team, it doesn't look like that.
Yeah, I saw Miguel Delaney tweeting yesterday saying there's never been a 10-0 result in a World Cup. So, and a lot of the arguments about the World Cup, expanding it, have been that you end up having these weaker teams in there who are just going to get humiliated. But yeah, it's just a completely different level of football, right? It's not. And I think a big part of it just comes down to the physicality of it. We live in a world now where football players are basically being optimized from the age of 7. Yeah. In order to compete, right? So those Bayern Munich players will have been receiving the highest level of physical what's the word I'm looking for? Conditioning.
Yeah.
From that point onwards, and there's an argument to be made now. I think weirdly, I recently had steroid injections to both my hips, and the guy who did it works with Premier League. Players, and I was talking to him about this, and he was saying so much of it now is just nurture. Like you've got to, if you miss out on those early years of development, even if you have the talent, the nature to be able to play, you're going to be so far off in terms of conditioning that you're just not going to be able to catch up. And I think that's what you're seeing there, right? Their inability to move is because they're just in a completely different physical ballpark to these guys.
So something I talk about in the book is I went to India and I interviewed some people in Mumbai who are pretty senior in Indian football, and people always ask the question, there's 1 and a bit billion people in India, why is their national team not very good? And the answer is because in England there's thousands of kids from the age of 6 or 7 who are part of it, and if you're not on that track from the age of literally 6, you're never going to be an elite level footballer. And in India they just don't have that infrastructure. It doesn't exist, and they're trying to create it in Mumbai, but that's sort of 10-20 years down the track. So there is no, just because you have a billion people, none of them are going to be anywhere near as good at football as academy kids in a sort of second tier English team.
I have a very hazy recollection of this, but do you remember that Chelsea were involved in this like reality TV program thing in India to try and find the best Indian footballer that we're then going to bring across and put them through their academy?
I do not remember this.
We should look this up because I think it would make a good video for us actually. But I'm pretty sure it's Chelsea, and I'm pretty sure it was India.
I can add in, like in Scotland, when Celtic decide to do it, they can pretty much make that game look like Bayern Munich versus Auckland against anyone. Like Aberdeen held them to a draw and then got done 6-0. And when 6 go past you, it's pretty much the same as 10.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of if you can be bothered if you're the attacking team at that point.
I think I found it, John.
Yeah, I found something.
A reality TV show documenting the antics and heartbreaks of a close-knit group of 20-somethings in London's... It's called Made in Chelsea. Is that what you were referring to?
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah, I don't see any Indian footballers in it.
I found a thing here. So they had a scouting camp. This is back in 2013.
Wow, a really, really long time ago.
Yeah, it was a while back. That is a while back.
I know, it feels like yesterday though, doesn't it? It's really sad. We've cut that because Steve criticised how John was podcasting. He said he was listening. And I agree, Steve. No, I thought it was really interesting, John. I think you did a good job, Steve. Let's talk about it later, John. I don't want to talk about it later with him. Yeah. Anyway, what I will round up with is just to say, I'm now reading from BBC Football, Bayern Munich, are currently ranked 6th in Opta's Power Rankings, which is a global team ranking system. Power ranking. I think they call it Power Rankings. Auckland are down in 5,074th.
That's less.
I didn't know there were that many teams, I'll be honest with you. And they're the next over 2,500 places below English National League side York City, which is that's real. When you were talking about the FA Cup before, that's the comparison.
It feels like a bigger gap than when you see
twice again as big. And the next lowest ranked team in the Club World Cup are the UAE outfit El Ain, who are only 625th. So it's a staggering chasm. Yeah. But congratulations to the players of Auckland City.
Forklift truck drivers, teachers.
Right. Pharmaceutical
one guy having to do one of his exams in his hotel room or something like
really?
that. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, that's so fun.
How do you think they're feeling today?
They probably found it quite funny, I'm going to say. Yeah. Maybe not in the moment because there's many, many people in the stadium and it might be a bit embarrassing. But if I was one of them and I got home, I think not only would I think everyone would think it was the coolest thing anyone's ever done, but also it's just kind of funny that you lost 10-0. It's great.
Also, you'd be up front with you're standing next to and competing against these superstar celebrities. I think you'd be pumped. You'd be so buzzed.
Yeah, man.
You'd be like, oh my god, I can't believe this. This guy, the way he moves. They always talk about how they move. I
saw Harry Kane sort of did a picture of him sort of clapping the crowd and like big 3 points. That, as if it was a sort of hard fought 2-1 win against Borussia Dortmund.
He's a pro.
He's only got one mode though.
He's a pro.
Yeah,
he didn't score, did he?
No.
Well, you don't need to score if your teammates have scored 10.
It's true. It's true.
Conserve your energy.
Anyway, that's all. I will say thanks to JJ.
Please listen to my album. Thank you.
Oh yeah, thanks to John McKenzie.
Please listen to my album.
I definitely don't do that. And thanks to Joey D'Urso, writer of this book that I hold in my hands, More Than a Shirt: How Football Shirts Explain Global Politics, Money and Power. Bye.